Hello, everyone. Welcome to COLABS Talks. My name is Zubair. I run an online media outlet called MENAbytes. Thank you so much for joining in. Thanks to all the panelists also for joining us today. And thank you to COLABS team, to the team at COLABS for putting this together. We have Junaid Iqbal, Muneeb Meir, Faisal Aftab, and Fifi Haroon today with us. We're going to discuss what the future of Pakistan's entrepreneurship ecosystem is going to look like after COVID-19. We'll quickly start off with introductions of the panelists, and then we'll jump onto the questions. For the attendees who would like to share questions, please do that by sharing them through the Q&A tab on Zoom. If you're joining in on Facebook, you can share in the comments. And for the first half of the session, we'll be asking the questions that we have, and for the next half, we'll be taking the questions that are asked by attendees to the panelists. So let's just start. Let's start with Fifi. If you can tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are these days and how COVID-19 has changed your personal life.
You want to know about my personal life? No, I don't think so.
No,
I know
not
exactly.
the business. Yeah.
It's always good to crack a joke right at the beginning.
Sure, yeah,
so
absolutely.
that people can relax. Well, I was actually working in London when we're up till February 20th. And then I moved to Karachi, not because of COVID-19, but just because circumstances were such. And I think that was probably the best move that I ever made, because had I been in London right now, London is very deeply affected by the coronavirus. But apart from that, if I had been in London right now, I would be alone. And that is how I would have had to deal with the situation. But because I'm at home, I have a large bustling family. We all keep within, 6 feet distance of each other because as not to have fights and not to collide it's more about different opinions, really. So that's how it's affected my personal life, in that I think I haven't been out for like over a month now at all.
Wow, right.
I've stayed at home and I've worked from home. But I've previously also worked from home in London, where I worked for the BBC World Service, and where I still work for the BBC World Service, but I will tell you about some other projects that I'm doing as well, in which I've been working remotely. And I'll pass it on to Junaid, I think.
Junaid, sure, please go ahead. If you can tell us.
Hi everyone, my name is Junaid. I serve as Managing Director for Careem Pay. I previously served as MD for Careem Pakistan and Careem Saudi. I also serve as the chairperson for Salt Arts, which is an arts management and production agency. I'm currently in Dubai. This is where I work now, and it's a pretty hardcore curfew here. If you need to step out, you need to go online, get a permit to go for groceries or to go to the pharmacy or anywhere. It's of course an interesting time as far as work from home is concerned. It hasn't been a huge change in some ways, because being in the tech industry in some way or form, this is how one works at least once a week anyways. It's now happening at scale. There were some initial teething issues, but as the weeks have progressed, things have streamlined quite a bit. And as for the situation one is in, I think Zubair, you and I were speaking before we started, that we are in a very privileged position, right, to be able to keep ourselves safe and to be able to quarantine ourselves. There's so many who are not in that position, so alhamdulillah, no complaints.
All right, thank you, Junaid. Muneeb, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, Baikia, and how has COVID-19 changed your life?
Assalamualaikum. My name is Muneeb. I am founder at Baikia. It's an on-demand transport, logistics, and fashion delivery business. I'm based in Karachi right now, working from home for the past many weeks now. I have barely been out. I've been out, I think, a few times, more so to get things going from a work perspective. But I'm, I've never worked completely remotely. I've worked remotely in different organizations, partly where I've collaborated with people overseas. But this is the first time that I'm actually working from home, which is allowing me to utilize a room I've never utilized now in the room in the house. But also, I'll also say that I'm actually enjoying it. I actually really like this time right now because it's allowed me to focus. I have fewer distractions, fewer people poking me, and I'm getting more work done. So contrary to what most people would think, I am actually enjoying this time. You're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Muneeb. Faisal, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, LIVC Investments and.
Sure. I'm Faisal Aftab, managing partner of Laxon Venture Capital. We are a pre-Series A venture capital fund focused on Pakistan in disruptive technologies. Made about 3 investments so far, and we have about 2-3 more in the pipeline. I'm currently based in Islamabad, which is where I live, and I've been in lockdown. I think self-imposed lockdown since probably the second week of March. And we've been working remotely since then. The office, I think, officially shut down sometime, I want to say the 22nd, when they officially did the lockdown. It hasn't been too difficult because, being, especially in venture capital, there's so many companies that we have to go through on a regular basis that I've been using Zoom for many years. And so I'm fairly comfortable in this particular platform. And, just personally, from a working point of view, I used to be based out of New York till about 2-3 years ago. So I've always managed teams in different parts of the world. So I've leveraged lots of iterations. Zoom was one of the first platforms that I started using along with Skype, but I do prefer this platform. I'm enjoying this time because the work-life balance actually is better. Like what Muneeb said, I think the efficiency is phenomenal. Where, I think all of us, whether we're VC, is almost like entrepreneurship as well, because you're working with startups 24/7. So for me, it's like given me a better chance to kind of spend time with the kids, balance time. Actually started cooking as well. I think Junaid was mentioning that earlier. I hadn't done that for almost 3-4 years. So it's been, it's a good positive change for me and enjoying it.
Right. I'd like to ask you something about your portfolio companies. How are you trying to help them in these times? Because, I mean, you've invested in Mandi Express, you've invested in Knowledge Platform. These are the type of companies that have come out on the positive side of things. The business has sort of grown for them if we look at global trends. What are you hearing from the rest of your portfolio companies, and how are you trying to help them in the crisis?
Sure. My own personal favorite company, bookme.pk, they're actually shut down right now, like all travel and mobility companies. So I'll start with them. Obviously, EdTech and Mandi Express, which is organic produce, not organic, but just fresh produce and essential services, they're doing well. In Bookme's case, I mean, one of the main things that we'd always focused on when we were doing due diligence and doing our planning for 5 years was essentially, I've been a fairly bearish person in terms of the global macro outlook. So some of that kind of filtered into the venture capital analysis and how we were determining what to invest in. And I'll get into a little bit more of that later, but thankfully that bearish outlook, I think, helped out where we planned in a manner where Bookme was very judicious with their expenditures and burn. So they run a very efficient shop and, big revenue, but burn is very manageable. And even though we gave them, I would say, relatively a smaller size round, we came in right before the bubble basically, escalated further. But they've been very good with the cash. I mean, they're almost sitting with 50% of the cash that we invested, which is going to give them an essential runway over the next I would say probably 6 months or so. And then we're prepared to step in and support them because we believe in the business model. We believe whenever things resume to normalcy, which may not be as soon as people are thinking, especially in the travel and transport sector, because I think there'll be second waves, multiple waves of this virus. And so if it takes 12 months, 18 months for things to get fully restored, we will back them. We're setting up convertible note lines for companies that need that support. On the Mandi Express and Knowledge Platform side, they're doing well, but then they have a different problem where when you're scaling rapidly and you're having to essentially fulfill orders or basically deploy your platform in the case of EdTech, your costs go up, obviously, right? Because you're still doing, deploying in your server costs, your cloud costs, and content development costs, delivery costs on the Express's side. So we're also looking at how we can help them. Luckily, on the investor side is obviously more open to companies like Monday Express and Knowledge Platform. So as they do need to raid, we may move their round slightly forward, like maybe December this year. But we'll go along and see. We're working with them 24/7 to answer your question.
Thank you, Faisal. Thank you, Faisal. Fifi, you've been working with Patari as a board member. What is it that you're hearing from them? What we're hearing from, the streaming companies, both music streaming and on-demand video streaming, that, the demand has gone high. People are, staying at homes, and obviously they are consuming a lot more content than they used to. Patari had to struggle a lot for the last few years due to different reasons. How are they doing as a business today, and how has COVID-19 had an effect on them?
Well, I think for the creative companies and the creative industry, this is almost an opportunity to do things differently. And Patari has responded in that kind of manner by doing live sessions and live concerts and live sort of conversations with artists like Umair Jaswal, Natasha Beg, etc., coming in at COLABS, and well, not coming in, but doing this from their own home. And sort of this is something that was done, I think, initially by Chris Martin of Coldplay, who was the first person who started, who just went on and started, playing his piano and singing Yellow. And that's how it sort of all started. And it's a great idea because I think right now people need positivity in their lives. And the sort of creative industry can provide that kind of hope, I think, in a way. You need to, apart from working, you also need to have some sort of something to keep you going. And and just watching reruns is not going to, is not the same thing as participating and, asking questions and being part of the conversation. So I think that there is a whole different way. It's not that the world hasn't been online. The world's been online for a while. I mean, social media has been so crucial to how people communicate and how artists communicate with their audience. And now it's a case of, I was watching this platform last night in which all the artists were appearing and talking about COVID-19, and it got very emotional after a while. And I think this is something that we need to talk about. Also, is the sort of mental health kind of issues that I think we all sort of face under these kind of circumstances where we have to isolate ourselves. And so this is where the creative industries can be a huge source of comfort and a huge source of, and for creative people, they can be a huge source of, what we can do. So Patari, in that sense, has started these sessions, and they're small right now because, people are not really fully attuned to the technology, or, I mean, people do come onto Facebook Live, but it's still not everybody's comfort zone. I mean, for us, it's a normal thing to be on Facebook Live, but for a lot of people, it isn't. So I think the world is going to have to learn but Pakistan's always adapted very well. We haven't had concerts for years until the Junoon concert happened. And so, we always find ways to be entertained and to keep going.
Right. Thank you, Fifi. Muneeb, how is Baikia doing? How is the business? You were in the middle of raising a round, if I'm not wrong, and has that taken a hit, or were you able to close it before COVID-19 hit?
No, so we were not able to close it entirely. We got a bridge round, which buys us runway. And because the funding the round was supposed to close actually this month, early this month. And, at onset, when basically there was a lockdown, we had to shut down our app, because all services had to be suspended. And so for us, business is, there's no business. I mean, there's hardly any business, right? I mean, given that there's a ban on transport of pillion riding, which is double savari, right? That's our core business. And so as long as that continues to be suspended, particularly in Karachi, and in the other cities, a little more lax, and we've gone about and suspended the business, but it's just it's a bad time for us. But I mean, do I believe that people will stop moving? That people will, the need for people to get from point A to point B is going to diminish? No, right? Sure, we're snowed in. It's like winters, right? So for example, I don't think, a lot of people are quite surprised by, this lockdown. I mean, imagine if you were in Chitral or you were in Hunza, for the entire winters, people are shut down, right? So sure, we have an anomaly and we're snowed in, but that doesn't mean that we can't work on our backlogs, that we can't creatively think, particularly from a technology perspective. Our responsibility is to essentially build things that people need. So it's a time for us particularly to go out and try and build things now that we had thought about building, but had no immediate plans to go ahead and build out immediately, just because we were so caught up in the transport race of ours. So for our from a Bikea perspective, we are focusing 100% now on building capabilities around logistics, which have been capabilities that we haven't really focused on, frankly, because we were fighting another battle. So we're taking it as an opportunity. In fact, I think from a technology and a product and an integrations perspective, the pace at which we're moving now, we're running faster than we ever did, right? Because we just don't have the same level of distractions. So I think we're going to come out with solid product rollouts after this lockdown.
Right. Thank you, Naeem. Junaid, you've led Pakistan and Saudi for Careem. You are familiar with how these markets work. You're now leading Careem Pay. First, I'd like to ask you about Careem Pay's rollout in different markets. Has that been postponed due to this, or now you're trying to, now you're trying to just roll it out as soon as possible? And second thing, the ride-hailing business is down almost everywhere. Apart from Egypt, I don't think Careem is operating its ride-hailing business anywhere. And you have expanded into delivery services. As Munif was saying, they're also trying to focus on logistics sector now. Now Careem is operating different kind of delivery services across the markets. They've launched grocery deliveries in Dubai yesterday. And there are also similar services in Egypt, Pakistan, and some other markets, even in Iraq. How you guys as a company are dealing with this, and what product, how it has changed your product roadmap?
Thank you, Zubair. Firstly, with Careem Pay, I think all the rollouts have actually become faster. Things we were planning on doing later have actually sped up. One example is Apple Pay, for instance, in Saudi Arabia. We were expected to launch Apple Pay somewhere later in the quarter, except Saudi banned cash about 3 weeks ago. So a deployment which normally would have taken 8 weeks of work got done in 2 weeks. And this is where the focus comes together. Careem, it grew from a startup to being a fairly large organization with multiple domains. You've got, of course, the ride-hailing business, the Careem Now business, the payments business, the super app business. And so everyone galvanized quickly. And there we have it. A product like Apple Pay is quickly rolled out. Similarly, we already have a peer-to-peer product in all markets. So you will see some send money, some request money, some split bill features coming out very, very quickly within the next few weeks. We've already started testing bill payments in several markets, and in 2 particular markets, one specifically, literally it's a matter of the regulator saying yes and we toggle the button on, and so you'll have those. When it comes to the ride-hailing business, of course, that business is down massively, and the people who are hurt the most are the captains, who primarily lost their entire livelihood. At the same time, there has been a strong pivot to deliveries of not just food, of daily essentials, of groceries, of pharmacies. And we have this really interesting product that we've been testing for a while called Order Anything. So essentially, shops which, let's say you have a shop in Jodia Bazaar or Bori Bazaar, which is not online, right? And you need to buy something from there. So you go to Order Anything, you select that shop you select the pin for the shop, and you select your own home or office or whatever the location is as delivery, and then you manually enter the order and the quantity, and the captain goes there and calls you and confirms the order that yahi cheez chahiye, and you like, bring this for me, and then you settle when the captain brings that for you. So we were running that in a hackish way, but now in UAE we've started testing our debit cards. So Kareem debit cards are now a reality. They're in testing. So in a situation like this, the captains will have the capability to pay for the merchandise on spot, so their cash flow issue gets solved. So a lot of innovations like this, which were going to happen anyways, but were planned for later in the quarter or later in the year, have immediately sped up. So the focus, and if you were to see the fundraising for fintechs has not only not slowed down, it has sped up during the COVID times. There was some statistic of how many $1 billion have been raised. Stripe announced a $600 million raise as a 36 billion valuation yesterday. So all of this is happening right now. And similarly, every business is having to evolve. When we look at Salt Arts, for instance, Fifi was just talking about online shows. So we pivoted. We started producing online. So tonight, in fact, will be the 100th show at 10 p.m. Pakistan time, where Meera Hashmi will be reading letters between Alice Faiz and Faisal. So every business is evolving. And so are we.
Right. Fifi, do you want to add something? I see that
Yeah.
you've turned on the microphone.
Yeah, so I mean, I work as a board member at Patari, but my sort of day job is I work for the BBC, and I also work as a media and advertising consultant. So I wanted to share some of how we've adapted or not adapted, and how this sort of works. So because I work with the BBC World Service, the product that I do, which is called Global Newsbeat, is we work in 8 different languages and in 7 different countries, including Pakistan. And so I used to do that in any case from London, and work remotely with the team in Cairo, with the team in Jakarta, with the team in Myanmar. So for me, that aspect has not changed at all. We've always worked remotely, and we've had to work within different work cultures. And I think that is something that's important with any company that's working globally, is that even if you're a large company like the BBC, you have to still keep in mind that you're working with real human beings behind those screens. And so we use email primarily. We also use WhatsApp. The BBC has Skype for Business. So we use all these various platforms to communicate and so almost nothing has changed on that front. For anybody in the BBC that works in output, so we have input and we have output. So input is what in normal parlance would be called reporters and so on, and people. I think for them things have changed quite a bit because they're working on the front line. Those of us who work on output, in putting out material, things are pretty sort of business as usual in that kind of sense. But very quickly, I'd like to tell you about something that relates to the coronavirus, because very quickly in the day when they started happening, I was contacted by Freya Altaf at Catwalk, and she said, we want to pitch this idea to Unilever for Lifebuoy, because they were going to do something else, and because of this particular virus starting at around the same time, both Freya and I felt very strongly that, the message of washing your hands constantly, of, the whole soap and water, something very normal, we felt that really had to go out. And so we literally worked night and day on WhatsApp where all of the whole team at Unilever was on with us. And we had a separate app where we had just our team, where we used to discuss between ourselves. But literally, there were sort of dozens of us on WhatsApp together. We were filming videos, most of them at home, done by the artists themselves. So this was a campaign where we had well-known celebrities endorse the whole washing hands idea, the need for it. And literally it was shot, a lot of it was shot on just, the people's phones. It was edited by an editor at home, put out almost within 2 days. I think we spent more time deliberating on what we should do and how we should do it rather than the actual process of doing it. But again, this was the need of the hour. And I think that we had to rethink, redo stuff. Normally, I think we would have said, we need 2 cameras, we need this kind of lighting, we need a sound man, we need a whole team. But we were willing to do this the way, and I think people are quite used to it now, seeing Zoom and Skype and, everything doesn't look as jazzy as it used to on TV anymore either. So again, these are ways that one adapts and puts things out there as quickly as possible when it's needed.
Absolutely, we all have to adopt and just continue doing what we do with the resources that we have at our disposal. Faisal, a question for you: has COVID-19 in any way changed the investment thesis of your firm? Are you now trying to look to invest more in health tech, for example, or the opportunities that may have accelerated growth due to COVID-19, or for you guys, it's business as usual in terms of deal sourcing?
Sure. So to answer the question directly, for us, it's business as usual. Different funds are going to be in a different position. So we were lucky that our fund actually officially launched in 2019, early 2019, and we ended up raising all the capital in 2019. So right now we basically have barely deployed 15% of the capital. So we're sitting in a good position. We do believe that valuations are going to come down significantly, and based on that, we feel that we should be able to get some good deals. To kind of just since we're talking about fund investments, it's very important to kind of see what's going on in the overall global macro scenario, right? Because in the startup ecosystem, we tend to somewhat isolate ourselves, and we don't realize that the money is interlinked with the larger capital markets, specifically what's happening in the reserve central bank currency countries like the US. I think the US kind of leads the charge there in terms of capital flow. So, if I take COVID aside for a second, right? And let's just say that we've had the longest running bull market in the US and the world for essentially a very long time. And that was the output of, I call it rate manipulation in a much more crass way, but it would be central bank policy in a more diplomatic way, where artificially rates were kept low for an extended period of time. And that created bubbles in the equities market or stock markets, your real estate market, and the bond market. Now, what that's created is such an unstable structure that any black swan event, which could have been the Iran war, which we had a chance in January of this year, or a pandemic, would have resulted in the same output. And so it's important to understand that as you're raising capital. I always say that financial education is extremely important as an investor, but also as a startup venture founder, because ultimately money is what sustains your business from a cash flow perspective. And so tracing, what's happening in terms of, especially the US, we saw what happened to oil futures about a day or so ago. What's happened? Demand has essentially shrunk and it's gone, right? So there's no logistics is shut down, as Manib was saying. Your movement is shut down. People aren't really moving. So essentially excess capacity of oil is sitting, all the storage is full. And that is going to impact our price in Pakistan as well, because Middle Eastern oil also is going to get impacted at some point when overall oil comes down. So now let's come to VC funds, right? So we're interlinked in our capital raise when investors in our funds make money. They make money from primarily capital markets and other businesses, but right now all businesses are down. So a lot of funds are going to struggle to raise money that were, let's say some funds, we were somewhat lucky. but a lot of funds were in the middle of their fundraise. So those funds have essentially, those fundraising efforts have stopped. And so now what you're going to look at is basically a delayed period. So we have to keep an eye on what happens in the developed markets and how the markets sustain. I personally think this is, right now the sentiment's gotten overly bearish, and rightly so. And the Federal Reserve, along with other central banks, is easing, and they're printing massive amounts of money. So that is sustaining the capital markets, but I don't see that filter into risk assets like venture capital for a fairly long time. And what Junaid was saying, funding is coming in. Yes, Facebook also invested in Geo just yesterday, took a stake. That capital is there. That for fintech, I think people essentially knew there was a lot of capital raised in the last 24 to 36 months. They were moving to cashless systems. And regardless of COVID, cash was going to disappear from the system. OECD common reporting standards and FATF were indicative in terms of regulatory policy that there was an overall move to take cash out of the system. So now, coming straight to investments in Pakistan, if you're a startup, I think if you have a business that has, sustainability and it's obviously growing in this time, you have a very good chance of raising money, because there was so much money that was just circulated in the system that a lot of VC funds have money, especially out of the Middle East and Far East, that are focused on Pakistan. They're rich on capital, and they're going to look for deals. But what definitely companies have to do differently. Valuations are going to come down by some estimates as much as 50%. And so the question is, do you want to go and raise right now, right? So, I mean, if now taking my investor hat off, I was an entrepreneur in a previous life. I would suggest that, look, if you don't need the capital, if you're a completely brand new startup, just use this time to read, educate, and plan, improve your, idea, and wait till more liquidity comes in the market. If you're a startup in need of capital, probably, rather than doing a full-blown round, doing a bridge round is more appropriate, where you probably won't have a down round. You may be able to get enough capital to extend your runway and then sustain at that point. And I mean, for companies that are scaling, there's going to be lots of money, because all the VCs are out there now looking for those deals that they missed in 2018 and 19 to potentially come in. And there's lots of great companies. I mean, Baikia is a great business model. I mean, they're solving an extremely important solution. And Muneeb, I mean, I know it's a stressful time, but look, what you're doing for Pakistan, especially in the last mile, for the entire overall tech ecosystem, there's going to be lots of takers. I know you've got those strict KPIs right now and this pressure to close around, but there's lots of fun. So I don't see companies like, Airlift or Baikia having issues. I think that founders are really smart. They know how to manage cash flows, and they'll basically be able to raise money. I'll give the floor to someone else. I've gone on for an extended period.
Right. Thank you, Faisal. Muneeb, I'd like to take Junaid's point of where he talked about, Kareem trying to help those retail shops in different areas, bring them online with their product. Baikia has been doing that, for quite some time, not maybe in a direct way, but in an indirect way, where you have this on-demand delivery in different parts of the country. I've used the service myself, and in some cases it has worked better than the usual food delivery options that you have, or the e-commerce websites that you have. Now, you guys have the resources in terms of technology and engineering teams and all. How do you think companies like Baikia can help these small businesses who have been, affected by the downturn? How can you help them, come online?
Listen, I was always interested in e-commerce. In fact, the word Baikia had a dual meaning. It didn't only mean motorbikes, but also meant buy Kia, kharida, right? So we are right now. We are also, when I talk about us working on logistics, we are building the capability for anyone to be able to sell a product, and for Baikia to help deliver it and collect payment against it. So our strategy is going to be a hybrid strategy around e-commerce, but not traditional e-commerce. Like, so there's no reason for us to get into the Daraz business, right? There's no reason for us to even get into the food panda business for that matter, right? Those are businesses that bleed a lot because they require a lot of money for customer acquisition. So I think our strategy is, and you'll see this over the next few weeks, our strategy is to somehow enable people who clearly at the end of this whole lockdown will be looking to do something, right? And they'll be hustling, right? Hustling to sell a service, to sell a product, to showcase that product. And we also believe that people are not very savvy, right? It's very complicated to go and set up certain merchant accounts with many of the e-tailers today, right? So how do you simplify that? So we are going to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out how can we solve for people to sell and to trade and to connect with each other.
Right. Thank you, Naeem. Fifi, you talked a little bit about remote working. You've been doing this, for quite some time. A lot of us are perhaps working from home for the first time in our lives. I mean, for a period as long as this. What are some of the habits one should develop? Because, when you're at office, that's an entirely different kind of environment. You know that you have to do these things and you get them done. You have people around you who might motivate you, who would push you to do it. Now, when I'm alone in a room trying to, get things done, how do I stay motivated and finish things on their time, deliver on time? What are some of the habits you've developed over these years?
I think being a journalist, you become a very deadline-oriented person, and everything in your mind is done according to, I have to go on air. I have to put this, this has to be broadcast. So I think that this is something that other people should adopt as well, because otherwise you're in this sort of continuous space of trying to do things and, can I do this tomorrow? Can I do it the day after? So set deadlines for yourself, almost as if you're going to be broadcasting or going on air or something is going on tonight. And force yourself to go to actually have meetings with people, to meet up on Zoom, to have these conversations, because I think working alone, I think one of the panelists said, this is a time where one is learning to work alone, and you're almost being thankful that you're not, you don't have too many distractions. But the other side of the coin is that you need these conversations, you need to communicate with other people that you're working with. That's very, very important. So don't, somebody said, this is a time of, I think it was on Twitter, where I spend half my life these days, or did previously as well. This is not social distancing, this is physical distancing. But you still need to be social. You still need to work with people as a team. And people need to, you need to be able to see each other or hear each other or talk to each other constantly. Teamwork is really, really important. Another thing, while everybody, when I was just listening to some of, because most people here work a lot more with startups. I work as a freelancer, primarily. I mean, I go on different contracts with the BBC, and sometimes I go freelance and sometimes I go full-time. And for freelancers, this is a particularly difficult time, because you need to pitch what you want to do. I've been wanting to pitch ideas to different television houses, etc., on new dramas and serials and so on. But it still takes time to adapt to how we're going to do this. Other people, even if you are used to doing this, other people still work in an old-fashioned way. They're used to working across a table. So I think that one of the habits that we should try and do, one is A, to be more social. B is, reach out to people, ask people to come in and have meetings and say, can I pitch to you, on Zoom? Can we discuss this? And the other thing that you can do is what was being mentioned, is doing other things that you could have done but didn't have the time to do previously. So now is the time, for somebody like Junaid to write that novel, or, for people to sort of write a play, or even people who have never thought about doing something like that, because, hearing all the others right now, very well spoken and articulate. So I think that you could start actually writing some of this down so that people can benefit from it. There's a lot of potential here that I'm looking at, which has been untapped. So those are good creative habits to inculcate into your daily routine.
Right. Thank you, Vivi. Junaid, there's a question from the audience. We'll start taking them now because the first half is almost over. I'm not sure if you would be in a position to answer this, but they've asked if Kareem is planning for layoffs or sending employees on unpaid leave. It has been almost over a month since this has started. COVID-19 has started, and as you said, most of your business is down. Munib was also saying the same thing. So, are you guys thinking along those lines, and what your plans are in terms of that?
But it's hard to comment specifically right now, but I'll tell you what is it that not just us, but all other businesses are doing. And I think, yes, you're right, it's been over a month. One reason why I think most businesses haven't reacted is because the information is becoming more and more clearer. So you don't want to act too quickly and think that, oh, we'll be back to business in August, or and then you do something to save costs and you realize sometime in September that things are actually going to be worse till December, and then you have to put your organizations through some sort of a trauma all over again. But what we have done is we have literally in the meanwhile gone back and looked at every line item possible, whether it's renegotiating with all our vendors, whether it's already reimagining our real estate strategy. We're in 14 countries, close to 100 cities, so many offices, and work from home has worked out quite well. So are there regions which can entirely work from a remote on a remote basis? And in some ways, when challenges like this emerge, you only focus on the basics and you start focusing on the most important stuff. So you have at one time you have a few core parts of the business, and then you have a lot of these bets that are running that you're making for the future. And sometimes you're like, all right, these were long-term bets which we were investing in, but it doesn't leave us runway right now. And if you focus on these bets, they put the current platform at risk. So keeping that in mind, we've actually taken a lot of those bets off the table and really focused. And all of this is of course done with the intention of securing the platform and securing the people for as many as we can, for and as long as we can. And of course, we're looking at all sorts of ideas and options on. I know in some companies have done pay cuts, some companies have done pretty aggressive layoffs, some companies have done furloughs, all sorts of ideas. But there's one thing I'd like to share, and especially some of us have seen a few crises. I mean, when I did my first ever startup with BMA, we did a company called BMA Financial. Our launch, I remember the date was going to be on 8th of Jan 2008 or 9, and on 28th December, Mohtarama Benazir Bhutto was assassinated. Everything went topsy-turvy, and you had a plan in financial markets in Pakistan, which were at that time insulated from the global meltdown, suddenly just went in a state of chaos. And I remember there were such hard times, there were so many layoffs, and it's natural to be very anxious at this time. It's also natural to be very scared, and to some effect, yes, that's okay, because hard times are falling on a lot of us. But history is a great teacher, right? And you always see that human beings have always come out of crises with innovation. And I loved what Munib was saying. He said that they're snowed out, they're snowed down, they're locked in, but they're working on newer ideas and stronger product stacks. So when this thing does get over, you will come out blazing and then we'll all come out stronger. And if you look at the global GDP, especially in the developing world, it has always, I mean, this is going to be the second or third time in Pakistan's history that the GDP will contract. And then, of course, so it's going to be a hard 1 year, hard 18 months. To some people, maybe hard 24 months. But then you will, when things will settle, you will have a very low interest rate environment all over the world. And today, while markets are looking scary and there is no money for investors around the world, the kind of interest rate environment, I mean, America just printed $2 trillion. So is there going to be another SoftBank in the next 5 years? I can see Faisal nodding. Absolutely.
So free money, right?
So,
So it's going to create that bubble again.
You're going to create that thing again. So these are hard times. These will be hard times on everyone. But this is the promise of humankind, right? You always come back stronger and more innovative. So in the long run, we'll all be fine.
Right. Thank you, Junaid. Faisal, taking this further, you mentioned BookMe. You started with their example, how they have kept things lean and they don't have a lot of fat that they might need to trim now because of this. If you were an investor in a company that probably had a lot of employees and engineering resources and all, what would be your advice to them to extend their runway? How do they do that? And the second question, which is from the audience, if you could answer both of them together, is if somebody is fairly new in the entrepreneurial ecosystem of Pakistan and they don't know any VCs, they don't really know anyone in the ecosystem, how do they reach out to VCs? What's the best way to connect with them?
I'll answer the second one first, since it's
right, sure.
the easier one. I mean, one of the most important things is that visit all the investors in Pakistan. You can get them from various sources, whether you go to the Nest.io's page and you see who's attended the conference in the previous year, Momentum, and all these forums that exist, right? And then I think COLABS itself is hosting all sorts of investor panels. So identify who the investors are. There's different classes of investors, so you don't necessarily have to approach a VC. You can approach angel investors. These are individuals, both domestic and abroad, that are active and investing in companies. They have the risk appetite. And then when you do come to the VC stage, the most important thing is to understand which stage the VC invests in, because all of us have a different risk appetite. So as I mentioned, we invest in pre-Series A and Series A. So what that criteria for us is basically there's some level of a product market fit, initial stages of a network effect where month-on-month users are growing, and or month-on-month revenue. So similarly, there's seed focused funds in Pakistan as well, and you can raise a different stage at an early stage from them. So just go to visit the website, study whom, just like you're applying for a job, right? You would go study the company, know the background, know the different funds, and then approach the right ones, and you'll have attraction. As far as contacting us goes, I think us, along with all other investors, we have our contact addresses and emails online. So just reach out. We do monitor them. We do go through them. There's teams that sit there and evaluate. So if there's the right fit, we'll obviously connect. Now, going back to your original question about having a startup that has a high burn and a large payroll expense. Look, I mean, BookMe was fortunate because they can scale without adding incremental team members, right? But that's not the case in all of our portfolio companies. In Mandi Express, for example, as they scale, they also have to add on additional packers and delivery, food delivery members. So, the approach there is, again, you look at your cash flow and you see, as what Junaid was saying, there's kind of the to-do list and the desired list, and there's the core business list, right? So I think right now, to conserve cash, you want to stick to the core business, continue to show growth and sustain. And if you have to extend the runway and cut cash, then just look internally in your team and see that, did the team expand too fast? Because in a startup, I mean, in my earlier venture, I mean, I wore like 6 hats. It's okay. And I personally hate the title of CEO. I just, it should just be like, at a level of you're an early stage company, right? There's no need for titles. And sometimes I've done things of even like getting on a support call to help customers. So it's just about, seeing how resources are being used efficiently. It's a great time to see who's going to step up in your team and evaluate and see who can continue, who really believes in the business. I do understand that some people, it's an economic issue for them, so pay cut and things like that may not work. And there's growth in the market, and there's contraction in the market. So if team members that you do have to let go, it's fine. They'll find another job, because there are companies that are growing rapidly, especially in the fintech space and food delivery. So I guess that would be my response to that.
Right. Thank you, Faisal. Muneeb, this one is from an attendee. They're asking, how could technology companies in Pakistan pitch their products or take their products to places like interior Sindh or some rural areas in Punjab? Now, this came from an anonymous attendee. I'd suggest you to go and watch Muneeb's TED Talk. It explains this very nicely. But Muneeb, if you would quickly like to answer this one here too, because people there are hesitant and unwilling to change from traditional methods that they've been using. How do you think companies like Baikia could do that?
जो इंटरनेट है या स्मार्टफोन है या एप्स हैं, essentially एक मोड है, right? आप उस मोड को इंटरनेट से चेंज करके कॉल पे ले आए, तो as long as you can show some level of traction, I think that's the first thing you need to take a stab at, right? So I mean, if you're trying to solve something for a demographic that has lower internet penetration, or is not very comfortable in English, or does not like using apps that much, then try and come up with a call center solution. And there are ways to also scale that. I'll give an example. Most of the call center agents at Baikia have actually not worked at our office. They have always been working from home, right? So, and the way we structure it as a crowdsourced call center team. And what that means is, just like our driver partners are like, contractual, just like that, the call center agents get paid per job, right? And they get paid per job, and that incremental price is loaded on to the customer, such that basically it becomes scalable. So one, it's scalable via the fact that people can attend calls from their homes. Two, people are paid per job. And three, it's not a cost to the business, because that incremental cost of paying that call center agent per job is priced into the price charge to the customer. So I don't think businesses will cease to operate over the next quarter, right? So things will emerge, right? People still have to get back to normalcy. So I think now is a good time to really think deeply about your product, because I think one mistake that many startup founders or founding teams make is they get very excited verbally, and they'll talk verbally about basically a product, but they're very, very bad at mapping, or wireframing, or scoping a product, right? And the problem is that basically they miss out some decision, right? Or a decision in a process that they haven't thought about. And what do venture capitalists do? Their job is to poke questions that come to their mind, about certain processes. And when startup founders get kind of stuck because they don't have the right answer, or they haven't thought through that answer deep enough, that's when they can't respond and can't win the trust of the investor. So I think it's a good time to think deeply about processes and map things out. And many times people give a lot of people will come in and say, oh, I'm not a software developer, I can't build something, right? I'm not an engineer, I don't know how to build this. Sometimes the best people who can craft out a journey are people coming from the creative world, right? So a layman is perhaps sometimes better at sketching out on a piece of paper, or what I do sometimes is I record like a YouTube video of myself, and I'll make that unlisted, and I'll share it specifically with one person, right? And that'll be like, say, 10, 20 minutes of me describing a problem. And then I'll have someone document it, right? And once they document it, they'll tag me and poke questions into my chain of thought. And then they'll try and basically, put it down into a diagram to show where the flow happens. And then we basically take it to the graphic designers to essentially, to map out the journey. And we don't really care about it looking pretty. A lot of people are hung up about basically things looking beautiful. Who cares, right? As long as they're functional, right? So the graphic designers are essentially thinking about just the function of it, right? And it's only when there are no questions left for me to answer to that we assign it to engineering. And our engineering time is actually quite quick. The problem is actually everything before engineering. So what I would encourage everyone to do, and one of the folks out there who are thinking of trying to get into a startup or build a startup, is take this time and read and research. You have fewer distractions. You have fewer opinions from people who know nothing about that particular segment, right? There's no point in going and asking an investor, what do you think about my idea? What does the investor know about your idea, right? They have no clue, right? So it's better to basically scope out your idea and know more about it than anybody else ever would, and then take it to engineering or investor.
Right. Thank you, Naeem. That was really good. Fifi, a lot of people, as Junaid was also saying, difficult times are ahead. A lot of people are perhaps, unfortunately, they're going to lose their jobs. Some will be sent on unpaid leaves and all. What would be your suggestion to those working in small businesses, startups, and even, big corporates who lose their job in the next few weeks or few months? What is it that they should do to prepare themselves? And we're going to see obviously also an increase in the influx of people providing freelance services, because Pakistan is already a very big market. And how do you differentiate yourself from the people who are already there in the market? What would be your general advice to the audience?
I think you have to keep dancing. You can't stop. You have to find different dances as well. If you're used to tango, you need to salsa, or you need to do something else. But you have to be innovative, and you have to sort of just sitting back is not an option, right? When I said not sitting back, what is an option is taking a little bit of time out if you can financially afford it, and try and think of things that you've always wanted to do, but you have never had the time to do because you can't afford doing. If you're out of a job, or if you're going to be out of, contracts or whatever it might be, this may be the time to learn a new dance. This may be the time to get innovative and to do those YouTube videos, which I think is a great idea, and I'm going to adopt immediately. I think this is a time of self-discovery as well. People need to look at themselves anew. They need to look at the world anew. And we need to say, well, all these things that I thought I could never do in my life, let's try it out. Don't be afraid of rejection. Don't be afraid of everything is an audition. Reach out to people. At best, they won't reply. I think it was Sharmeen Nubet, who apparently sent out I think it's over 1,000 emails before, New York Times replied to her and said, can you make a video for us? This was right at the beginning of her career. And I think we're also scared of rejection, and it's a very anxious time, and it's a difficult time that we feel we don't want to put ourselves out there. But I think you need to, this is a process of self-discovery. And I think that's what I would encourage people to do, is find out who they are. And once you know who you are, you can go to the rest of the world with that picture.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Fifi. Junaid, you were talking about how COVID-19 has accelerated your plan for rolling out the payment services across the region. Do you think it is going to increase digital adoption in Pakistan too, or Pakistan is a completely different market when you think of payment services, when you think of people, be willing to pay through credit cards or these mobile wallets instead of cash? How are you seeing the situation?
I think the situation differs country to country, but generally the trend is positive in every market. If you look at Saudi Arabia, for instance, it's a very heavily carded country. Majority of the population has debit cards, yet there was a lot of reluctance to use them online. So from a carded population to online usage ratio, it was very low. Except, as I said 2-3 weeks ago, the government just banned the exchange of cash on deliveries. So suddenly the adoption went high. In UAE, the adoption is the highest in the region. It's a very heavily carded and digitally connected market, and yet it is not 100%. Yet it's still in the 60s. It's still in the 60s benchmark. So it's not like in UAE 90% of transactions happen in digitally. It's in the 60s. But that has suddenly moved up, and I think that's going to jump up to 80s. When it comes to Pakistan, depending on who you talk to, whether you're talking to Kareem or Baiki or you're talking to Daraz or Food Panda, and cash is about 90% plus. And I think that adoption towards digital is now happening at a much faster pace. And the hybrid model, which sort of Muneeb alluded to as well briefly, is, for instance, in Pakistan right now, you very soon, not just us, multiple services, you will be able to top up your wallet at your doorstep. So you'll be able to call a cash collection car type. They'll be able to take the cash from you. And with that, you'll be able to either buy a mobile recharge or send money peer-to-peer or pay for your rides or pay for your food. Something funny happened in Jordan. We launched this car type in Amman, which was the cash pickup car type. The idea was to fill up your wallet and then use it for your rides, for your food, for sending money to family, friends. And suddenly the uplift was insane. And in some markets, when we were comparing it, so we said, okay, the average top up is 2x of a ride value or 3x of a ride value. So people were paying for 2x rates. And suddenly in Jordan, it's like 20x of a ride value. Like, what on earth is going on? And again, you double click, you dig deeper. It turns out Jordan has coins, right? It still has coins, and people hate carrying coins around. So a new use case basically emerged. People said, okay, this is a good idea. I don't have to carry these coins anymore. So you call the car, it's like not going to the bank and getting notes. You digitize your coins, and then from there on becomes easier. So I think the adoption will really increase. And I know we're at the end of the time. I just want to leave one thought, picking a little bit what Fifi was saying. Personally, during this time, I had 3 sort of times of reflection. The first was when the first few days had gone past. It becomes all mushy, right? You're in the same space. Your weekend and the weekday, your day and night, it's all happening in the same space. So it can get a little mushy. So after going nuts for like the first 4 days, I drew myself a schedule. Okay, I'm going to work out at this time. I'm going to eat at this time. This is when I'm going to go to sleep. I'm not going to watch more than 1 hour of Netflix a day. Otherwise, this can all go south. So that was stage 1, and that really helped. The stage 2 is when the fear was picking up a bit, and for a second I thought that, okay, what if I, let's say, get infected with COVID, and what if I find out that I'm going to die, right? It is the reality, right? So we are often afraid to think of death, but when you think about it, it puts things in perspective. I was like, yeah, okay, I live in a very comfortable place. So many people don't even have that. So if I had to die in this place, it's fine. But if I had 2 weeks to live, what would I do? So the 2 thoughts came to my mind. One was, I'll get in touch with all family and friends, and I'll talk to them on Skype, and I'll try to help people do charity or do whatever I can. So that got past. That was the second wave of motivation, and that got you by. And then again you get into a slump, right? Because this has already been depending on where you are, 3 to 6 weeks already. And it looks like it's going to be another few. And so the third wave of thought was, this thing's going to be over soon enough. If not 2 weeks, then 4 weeks, then 8 weeks. Am I going to regret not doing certain things when we look back at this time? Because we in our generation will constantly look back at this time that, oh, this is what we went through. And so then it was a lot about, okay, here are the books I wanted to read, which I haven't read, or here are the things I wanted to do. I've been trying to learn how to play the guitar. Okay, it gives me extra 30 minutes a day to practice, so on and so forth. So I think it's time to be introspective. And इकबाल का शेर है, तुन दिए बादे मुखालिफ से ना घबराए उकाब, ये तो चलती हैं तुझे ऊंचा उड़ाने के लिए. So I think the entire human race is facing opposing winds. It'll lift us up higher. Thank you.
Very beautifully said. Thank you so much, Junaid. Faisal, what do you think is going to be the biggest effect of COVID-19 on Pakistan's startup ecosystem? You've said that we can expect the valuations go down. Pakistan में पहले भी क्या हो रहा था? I mean, I think 12, 18 months ago that, you know, investors would ask for majority stake even at early stages. There were, you know, those type of investors that we've had, especially, you know, some angel investors. So what do you think is going to be the biggest, you know, effect of COVID-19 on the Pakistani startup ecosystem? But before you answer this, I'd like to go back to Junaid quickly and ask him this question, if he has started angel investing in Pakistan yet.
Yes, the answer is yes. I'm learning. I'm speaking to a lot of. I haven't spoken to Faisal yet, but yeah, it's a lot of learning. Yes.
So those working on their early stage ideas can perhaps, you know, get in touch with Junaid to.
I hope you weren't referring to Junaid for the 60% stakes.
No, I wasn't.
Just kidding.
Yeah, please go ahead, Faisal.
Sure. You know, I mean, look, I was somewhat bearish, but after every bear market comes a bull market, right? So I think for Pakistan, you know, what was happening in Pakistan? I mean, I think a lot of angel investors jumped in too early, not understanding where the market was. These things are very methodical if you trace them, right? So if you look at India and the region, 3G and 4G adoption, which was the key catalyst for smartphone adoption, took place in 2008 and 10. In Pakistan, we didn't launch 3G and 4G till 2014-15. So that lag effect essentially created a perfect timing around 2018-19, where you started to see that network effect, where essentially about 5 years ago, you had less than 20 million or so active users online, whereas, you know, we're effectively somewhere around 70 million odd users. So money then starts to find this, market that's emerging. And for Pakistan, I think, yeah, there's a short-term slump. You know, again, if a lot of startups didn't plan for this event this year, so they, you know, it may slow things down. But what's going to happen is that, you know, after this, there's a dramatic change. As what Junaid is saying, specifically when Saudi banned cash, that was a catalyst, right? In Middle East, the adoption is going to uptick. In Pakistan, again, there's going to be an uptick of digital payments, which, you know, until now we have a massive black economy. I'm extremely bullish on Pakistan because our documented debt to GDP ratio on the documented economy, our debt is very minuscule, right? So we have at least the same size black economy, if not larger. So what's going to happen is as we go digital, that entire black economy is going to come online, and you're going to see our GDP growth rate increase, and you're going to see new innovation and idea come into tech. I mean, tech is the future. We've already entered the information age. This disruption, I always do the analogy with the agrarian age and the industrial age, where you basically had one, you always have a crisis when that transition is happening, right? So right now, I think it's pretty evident that the information age post-COVID has arrived. We're moving into a low-touch economy for the foreseeable future. And one of the main catalysts of that is going to be digital payments component. And I think that's going to drive the entire industry forward. And just some, positive food for thought for entrepreneurs. Out of every crisis comes basically great innovation and ideas, right? As people for the first time, we're all kind of stuck in our rat race. And then this pause allows us to lift our head and think and, evaluate if what you're doing is even meaningful. And maybe, take a risk. This is the time to take a risk and start a business, at least start thinking about starting a business. Out of the 2008 global financial crisis, the companies that came out soon afterwards were Uber, Airbnb, Zoom, just to name a few. I mean, there's a plethora of these companies. So this entire age that we're seeing come about, from it started in 2009-10, and now there's a reset. So lots of opportunity coming. I think Pakistan, it's the 5th most populous country in the world, the 4th fastest growing country in the world for broadband adoption. So the tech ecosystem, I think, has a long way to go, and we're just at the tip of the iceberg.
Thank you, Faisal. Muneeb, you guys have launched different initiatives with NGOs to help those who are struggling these days, and you'd also launched an appeal in a newspaper, trying to ask the government how you can help them. Do you think this is time for players like Baikia and companies like Careem to work on different public-private partnership initiatives and help the government in this crisis? And the next part of this question is, do you see the government playing a role in helping startups in the country, not just financially? Maybe our government doesn't have the resources, the bandwidth to do that, but what is one thing that you would really expect them to do to help startups going forward? These two questions.
Before the lockdown and before we got into the state, हमारा तो कभी लेना देना ही नहीं था हुकूमत के साथ, ठीक है? So what this lockdown allowed us to do is first and foremost engage with the civil government, ठीक है? And what we did was, and I'll give you Karachi's example, कि हम सिंध गवर्नमेंट के डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड जो राशंस हैं वो डिलीवर करें. सो आई थिंक इट्स वन ऑफ द फर्स्ट टाइम्स कि हम इतना हैवी पेलोड भी बाइक पे उठवा रहे हैं, ठीक है? सो क्यूमुलेटिव वी टॉकिंग अबाउट लाइक 40-50 kg, ठीक है? सो इट्स अ लॉट ऑफ पेलोड. और दूसरा, वी आर प्रोवाइडिंग जीपीएस कोऑर्डिनेट्स ऑफ वसूल करदा जो है, जिसने वसूल किया है वो, ठीक है? And in addition to that, we are also taking the Shanakhti card ki photo as proof of delivery. So this is the kind of data that the state otherwise maybe even if they got some level of this data, they had no way to validate it. Okay? And so I think what we have tried to exhibit in this is a process that can be scaled. Okay? Now, of course, not every jurisdiction, not every city has taken up this offer, right? But those who have, at least for us as well, it's allowed us to also test if we can do this in a scalable manner. So, जहाँ तक एक तो ये deliveries का हो गया, दूसरा basic जहाँ तक electronic payments ka, I think quite importantly, and this is great news for for Careem, Careem Pay, and for that matter anyone in the fintech space as well, right? This is one of the first times that the government was willingly trying to push money out digitally. क्योंकि अगर आप सोचें कि पाकिस्तान की जीडीपी, मुझे एग्जैक्ट नंबर तो नहीं पता, लेकिन काफी कंसिडरेबल पोर्शन तो गवर्नमेंट टू पीपल पेमेंट्स है, राइट? और वही डिजिटाइज नहीं हुई, तो जो पाकिस्तान में अलमिया पेमेंट्स का इन जनरल है वो ये है कि जो तनख्वाहें लोगों को मिलती हैं वो कैश में मिलती हैं. जो फैक्ट्री वाला है उसको कैश में तनख्वाह मिल रही होती है, तो भैया आप उसको क्यों, हाउ इज ही एवर गोना एंड अप बेसिकली मेकिंग अ बैंक अकाउंट, तो पैसे ही कैश में मिल रहे हैं उसे. तो जो इनपुट है वो इनपुट ही बेसिकली बैंक अकाउंट के थ्रू नहीं है. और I think the state will also start to recognize that they need the private sector, because one thing that you're clearly seeing is that the state is generally helpless, right? And this is a good opportunity for them to also start talking to the private sector. So I think that trend has started. जिन DCs को या सेक्रेटरीज को मैं पहले नहीं जानता था, जिनका नाम मुझे नाम आता था ना उनको मेरा नाम आता था, बेसिकली एटलीस्ट हमें जानते तो हैं, right? And at least tomorrow if we or anybody in the private sector wants to help the state in any capacity, we should be able to help provide for that, right? So so yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. And again, all of this will end, right? All of this will end. What will come out of it is people with solutions. You know, क्योंकि अगर आपने इस टाइम पे solutions नहीं सोची, तो बाद में तो आप लोगों की attention कैसे लेंगे?
Absolutely. Thank you, Muneeb. Fifi, we're just wrapping up. If you would like to say anything, you know, your last comment for those who are watching, founders, employees at different companies and all, or whatever you'd like to say.
I can't think of a poem or a couplet like Junaid did, but that was pretty good, Junaid. I think that, you know, what this has been a really important session for me, because I'm not, though I am on the board of a startup, I'm not a startup person. So as I said, you know, I wanted to bring the human side to this as well. Whereas the many, you know, the rest of the people can bring the business side to it. And I think that the one thing that I would like to leave with people is take care of yourself. You know, there have been days in here that I've been climbing walls, that I've been depressed. You know, you start thinking about all the worst possibilities that could happen in your life. I think prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. I think it's really important to wake up in the morning and, you know, to do something important, like, you know, brush your hair and, you know, change your clothes and all of the, you know, this is what happens when you've been sort of locked up for a while, is that, you know, everything, I don't know who it was who said that everything doesn't have to, I think it was Muneeb maybe, who said that everything doesn't have to look pretty. Well, actually, you know, it is better to have that kind of sort of self-awareness, and your family will be thankful to you for it. But to just take care of yourself. I think that's really important. Understand that you're a human being. And if you need to take a few hours off, or you need to watch an extra hour of Netflix, just go for it. And take long walks. I haven't done that, but I know people in Islamabad who are doing that, or people who are going out for long walks, because, you know, there is that amount of, Karachi doesn't have the parks and so on. But go for those walks and, you know, keep your distance from people and get in touch with nature again. I think that would be a good way to go about it.
Right. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Fifi. That's something that I've been doing, and yeah, I really enjoy it a lot. Junaid, your final remarks, anything you would like to say to attendees, especially the founders, because I mean, you've started angel investing as well. So if there's anything you'd like to say to them.
I think, look, guys, these are going to be, this is a rough ride. This will be rough ride for a while. So, and you know what Faisal was saying, that and when what Muneeb was also saying, I'll sum that up. So when so, you know, they say a good product manager is one that if you give him 11 hours to cut a tree, he will spend 10 hours sharpening his axe and planning where to strike. So I think this is a bit of a time. It's giving us that opportunity to slow down, take a step back, and there is a likelihood that a lot of people will lose jobs. Know that it's not your fault. It's not a reflection on you. This is a once in a lifetime event. Know that we will come out stronger, because we always, as human beings, innovate and we come out stronger. And for founders of companies who are carrying a heavy cash outlay, all literature from all previous crises points to the fact that those who acted early and those who acted decisively were able to survive, were able to keep their platforms alive. And if the platform is alive, you always have the opportunity to fight another day, and you always have the opportunity to take care of those who were hurt today, and take care of them tomorrow. I think those would be my comments. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Junaid. Faisal, if you would like to add anything, and if you could quickly also, you know, share your thoughts on whether you think the technology ecosystem of Pakistan is going to come out of this stronger or not.
Again, the other panelists have already said a lot of what I feel. Using this time to reflect on one's life, what one wants to accomplish, and realize the value of life. Right? We take it for granted. We just kind of follow what everybody else is doing at times. So I think this is a great opportunity to use this downtime. On the tech ecosystem side, of course, I mean, as I said earlier, I am extremely bullish. I think that companies that had always had a solid business model are going to survive. They're going to come out stronger. The best founders and the best teams, and most founders are actually used to this because the toughest endeavor one can take on is that when you face adversity, you conquer it and then you come out stronger, right? You have multiple lives. So going forward, I mean, this is the digital age. I mean, we're heading into, look at what we're doing. We're doing these panels on Zoom. I don't think this is going to go away. I mean, even when things get back to normal, people will essentially still engage in these environments. You're just trained to look at Zoom's valuation. I think it's touched something like $30 billion, right? I mean, Hilton was sitting at 35, right? Exactly. I was looking at Hilton, one other company, American Airlines, and they were collectively worth less. So, I mean, this is it. This is that moment. If I looked at World War I and World War II, which essentially was the deciding factor between large princely states and your, monarch systems that essentially were disrupted from the agrarian age to the Industrial Revolution, and then subsequently you had your industrial barons. I think you're seeing that transition right now. Your markets in the U.S. are a pretty good measure of that. If you look at the top 10 companies in 20 years ago, we basically had Microsoft and Intel and a few other small ones, right? Today, the top 10 is basically 6 out of the top 10 are technology companies. So I think that's pretty indicative of where things are heading. Pakistan, again, the opportunity is so massive because unlike the region, we have a huge population. We now have a huge user base, and you don't really have to reinvent the wheel. Just look, to your east. I always like looking at the India or Indonesia as a better comparable for Pakistan or the Far East versus Middle East, because culturally and structurally things are very similar. I think a lot of those ideas are sitting there. You don't have to copy it 100%. Do a local implementation. I'm really excited. I think that maybe once this stage of I would say a deep freeze essentially goes away, you're going to see lots and lots of innovation come out, because hopefully people are going to use this time to think outside the box for a change.
Right. Thank you, Faisal. Muneeb, your final comments, and I'd also like you to answer if you can, if the time allows. How are you keeping your morale of your team high? Because these are crazy times. I'm sure many of them try to reach out to you to learn what's happening, and how are you guys doing as a business? You obviously have the responsibility of partners, but they are not they're not on your payroll. So those who are on your payroll, how are you keeping their morale high?
So मैं आपका दूसरा जो सवाल है उसको पहले जवाब देता हूँ. तो पहली बात तो ये कि we have 200 employees. That's a lot of people, right? हमने ये कहा कि जी हम और सारे खर्चे जो रोक देंगे, ठीक है, और let's go back to really not have to incur any expense unless we absolutely have to. So there's intense pressure on the team to cut all other costs, but we're not laying anybody off. Because we are first and foremost answerable to our people, So our employees, we have to safeguard them, but that does not mean कि vacation है, right? So हमने क्या शुरू कर दिए कि हर एक employee जो है ना उसको हमने task करना शुरू कर दिया कि भाई आपने फोनों पे लगना है, आपने calling करनी है, ठीक है. जो हमने वैसे Facebook या Google को आउटसोर्स किए हुए थे काम, वो काम आपने करने बेसिकली कॉलिंग करके, ताकि यूटिलाइजेशन हो सके उन लोगों की भी जो कि अदरवाइज टेक्निकल कोई काम नहीं करे. एंड ईद तक आप यही करना है आपने, राइट? एंड वी विल गेज योर प्रोडक्टिविटी सिटिंग फ्रॉम होम. इंटरनेट आपको दे देंगे, कॉलिंग आपको दे देंगे, मीटिंग्स आपने करनी है बेसिकली. You can set those up and we'll give you the resources, but get people to be productive. So I think internally many people are psyched up. They're not depressed, right? And they're also psyched up because हमें ये भी assurance है कि जी हमारे investors ने भी हमारे ऊपर, you know, there's a support there. We have money, right? It's just how long do we want to push the runway out, right? I mean, खुदा ना खास्ता अगर ये बहुत ही खिंच जाए, life does not return to normal for another 6, 8, 9, 10 months, and there's a problem, right? But then that means that basically then we probably need to shrink further around our costs. But let's get there if we need to. Again, दो चीजें मैं point out करूँगा. एक तो जुनेद ने बड़ी pertinent बात की है कि schedule जो है ना, schedule बहुत ज़्यादा important है. It doesn't matter whether you're going to the office or not. सुबह उठ के उसी time पे आप उठ के नाश्ता करें, उसी time पे आप जो है ना काम पे आए. ठीक है? Dress up, comb your hair, you know, feel good. Feel like you're going to work. You can wear shorts, but at least feel like you're going to work. You know, tension नहीं लेनी, क्योंकि ये तो चीजें चलती रहेगी. You know, ये तो दुनिया का वैसे निजाम है. For some reason या other, कुछ ना कुछ हमेशा मसले होते रहते हैं. Right? I mean, generally अगर आप समझ रहे हो कि आप कैद में हो, तो आप सोचो कि भाई जो पाकिस्तान में सारी औरतें हैं, खासकर जो मिडिल क्लास की हैं, वो तो ताउमर कैद में, और जो आपके घर में बेसिकली मेड सर्वेंट्स काम कर रही हैं, उनको तो और आपने कैद में डाला हुआ है. So, like, maybe it's time to really think about what you really do as a person and how you basically, you know, engage people in your life. And it's time to think about that. But in general, it's time to think about things. It's time to read. It's time to research. If you don't like reading, you know what? Just हर कमरे में, हर टेबल पे जो है ना किताब कोई रख लो. कुछ नहीं होगा, कहीं भी आप किताब नजर आएगी, एक पैराग्राफ ही पढ़ लोगे तो आपकी जिंदगी में जो है ना थोड़ा सा आपका बेसिकली माइंडसेट चेंज होगा इसी चीज के बारे में. So take this time, take this opportunity, you know, exercise. I hardly ever exercised, and now, you know, I live on a main artery in Karachi, तो मैं बाहर जाता हूँ तो बिल्कुल सुनसान होता है, and I'm like, या अल्लाह वैसी लॉकडाउन और लंबा चले कि बेसिकली मेरे घर के सामने जो पी ट्रैफिक का चला था वो शुक्र है बंद हुआ. So yeah, look at the positives. There are a lot of positives. You can hear the birds now, right? Because, you know, again, things are going to go back to normal, and you're going to miss this time. So if you look back, whenever you look back, you need to make sure that this has been a very, very productive and rewarding time for yourself. Like Fifi said, take care of yourself, but don't goof around. Like, you know, you could be in prison and just be depressed. You can be in prison, basically be motivated for the day you come out of prison.
Right. Thank you so much, Muneeb. Thanks a lot for the final comments. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks a lot, Faisal. Thank you, Fifi. Thanks a lot, Junaid. Thank you, attendees, everyone who joined us, and thanks to COLABS for putting this together. It was a pleasure having you all, and I look forward to talking to you again very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.